Hi, my name is Sarah.
My name is Mujib.
And welcome to another episode of Let's Get To It. This is episode number 27.
Yes.
And yeah, props to us. And it's elemental. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk a little bit about the elements and kind of how that converges quite literally and figuratively. So yeah, we're feeling fire, we're feeling water, we're feeling air and earth, and which is pretty cool.
Right. And it's cool because like the fire and the water is kind of what started us on the idea of this episode. Was thinking about specifically like going with the flow, or in that being very water. And when I mentioned it to you, you were like, I think we had just been talking about fire too, in that sense of like that fiery energy. So even when I mentioned that idea of going with the flow, after just having a conversation about like fire energy and needing to like actually ignite some things sometimes and push it all, like get things going, and so to think that like immediately when we start thinking about like water, like I can't think about water without thinking about earth too, you know what I mean? So like going with the flow, but also like what's the contour that I'm following as there's a lot that goes into it when I start thinking about it as an elemental topic, the idea of going with the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Going with the flow in our daily lives. And I always reference previous podcasts. I love to do that. We have plenty of material on going with the flow and adaptation, and like an entire podcast devoted to those kinds of things. So we're definitely going to kind of touch back on that, kind of how to free flow, especially in this very fluid age, that we're entering, and sort of the age of Aquarius that we're in right now, and kind of all of these things. But yeah, how the elements really can affect us, again, individually, and extrapolating that, and I think it's cool just to talk about the literal and the figurative when it comes to going with the flow, or knowing when to not, because sometimes it's just as important to know like when you're swimming upstream and it's time to like kick it the other way.
Right.
Oh
wow, that makes me think of like because we were just in the pre-conversation, we were talking about like age and wisdom and gaining information as time goes on. And it makes me think about how if we can read the lay of the land, then sometimes we might be able to see how that stream is going to go, and like if I take the time to step back and look ahead of me and can see like what are the features that are in my way? Does it look like there's a gap there? Is this going to go into a waterfall, like X, Y, and Z? Like, can I get any information from the air? Right? Can I hear anything on the wind right now? Like, can I tell that that's a waterfall coming up, or that things are about to start going in the wrong direction, or all the different things. And then it also makes me think about how the way that we inform ourselves previous to getting into things too, like that planning process. So in the sense of like using the term going with the flow as thinking of like a river tour or a rafting tour or a kayak tour or something like that, right. Where like if I look at the map ahead of time and I know where those bends are going to happen, I know where it might get fast or whatever because I'm looking at the contour map or something like that, then I might know a little bit about how the flow is going to go, and then I can give myself a chance to prepare for that, versus just like going with the flow and not realizing that this river turns into a rapid or like is going towards a dam or something like that.
And I well, it's interesting too, because I think that speaks to an idea, or this idea that we actually can prepare, and that we can read a roadmap, and I think that also comes with kind of age and experience, like sort of that preparatory process. Right. Then maybe, when we're younger, we're just kind of like, I'm just going to do it, or I'm going to be a little bit more reactionary. I'm going to see what happens. And I'm sure, what is it? There's just that saying, like, you can't see the forest through the trees. Like sometimes we can get stuck because we're not seeing that big picture. We might just be seeing like, okay, I've got this obstacle. Like one thing we were talking about pre-conversation is, when are those moments? Is it, okay, I've got this obstacle and I'm going to work through it and I'm going to get around it, through it, over it, whatever. Or versus like when something just isn't working, and making that decision, like it, and doesn't matter how bad you want it. Like, and we've all been there, whether it's a relationship or a career choice, or, I mean, so many things in our lives where it's a matter of sort of figuring out, is this an obstacle to overcome, or is this a like, wow, this is a dead end. Right. This is a dead end for me, you know? So yeah, I think we can all speak to overcoming obstacles versus like the dead end thing. Like the tree has fallen and it's not going to get cleared.
Right. And it's wild that you just use that as your analogy for it, because I think about, I was thinking in that way, and I think it makes me think about resources. Like, how many resources am I going to pour into this? Like, am I going to turn around and try to go get a chainsaw and come back and cut this tree up? Or am I going to try to, wonkily build a fire under the tree branch and burn it up, and push it out of the way? Am I going to try to drive my car into it? Am I not going to do anything and sit here and pout about it? Am I going to, you know what I mean? Like, there's the spectrum of what I'm going to do when I meet that roadblock, and how much of my personal resource and physical resource and material resource am I going to put towards that thing. And again, it comes with that wisdom too, because I do know that maybe if I do put enough of my resource towards that thing and it does open up, then I'm going to see the reason why that happened in the first place. I don't know. There's a lot more to it than just like, I hit this wall and the wall is a wall, and do I turn around because there's dynamite. You can blow walls up.
Right.
Sometimes if you need to,
It is. And I think, it's not, there's not a one size fits all answer. Like, I can't think of like any advice really to give anybody, because it's so contextual. Right. And you just kind of have to know that in the moment. Like, even, as it feels like we're coming out of COVID or whatever this means, or sort of like slowly exiting this sort of pandemic into this like quasi pandemic or whatever, whatever we're calling this next phase. A lot of us, especially business owners, entrepreneurs, have had to make some pretty tough decisions about, when do I call it? Is enough enough? Do I change my business or pivot in a certain direction? Do I just keep fighting because I'm going to bust that hole through, and then there's sunlight coming out of that hole and it's going to be all good? And each one of us have had to make very individualized decisions, kind of like based on the information we have, based on, all kinds of things. And so, also like just being able to assess your given situation and just be like, all right, and I think, if you have been on this planet a little bit longer, you have a little bit more experience, like that might serve you well. Just to kind of identify, like, you know what, I'm going to call it. And just, not to dance around the subject, to be completely upfront and personal and transparent about it. Like, I basically called it on, the space that I was renting for my studio. I was just like, you know what, do I want to fight tooth and nail to kind of like hang on? Or is this kind of an opportunity where it's like, you know what, all these signs are pointing towards like, you actually need to get out. And there's something new on the horizon. So it's not sad, it's not tragic, it's not any of those things, but actually like saying, nope, you know what, I'm actually not going to waste my energy and resources to rebuild on like soiled land. Like, we're out, Right. So but that decision is going to be different for every single person. And
it's not to say that if you use the resources and stay on the soiled land that it's going to work. Like that dynamite wall analogy isn't that's probably not the best option.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
As far as like, and I think I touched on this before where I said like, sometimes once, of those like moments in our lives that come around that cycle where it's like, no, this is why you have that bulldozer. Oh shit, I have a bulldozer. And then you go and you grab the bulldozer, but you don't grab the bulldozer for everything, and sometimes the bulldozer is not here and not behind us, and you realize that you got to go in the other way, and it's not like oh shit, if I had the bulldozer in this moment sort of situation. It's more just like, oh, I guess this is where life is right now. I'm gonna make this move and do this next thing and it's really cool, right? I love this podcast. I love having these conversations with you so much because it's really cool. Because if you look at Rev, like, this is the time that you shut the doors. It's not the first time that you were up against it, though. You know what I mean? Like, before you used there was a bulldozer, you used it. There was some dynamite, you used it. And, like, getting to this point, and it's like, okay, like, we can keep going with these pickaxes. Mm-hmm. We're down for it. Like, I'll go with this pickaxe until the pickaxe breaks. And when the pickaxe breaks, like, I'll dig with my hands.
Yeah.
But is that really what I want to do?
Right.
Is that really the best? Is that the best use of my resource right now? Mental resource, personal resource? Or can I use my resource and take what I have and I understand that, like, it's somewhere out there. Like, I didn't drop this big boulder in my way. So let's go back. Maybe something that dropped this big boulder in my way opens something else up.
And yeah, you know, the closer that I get to the camera, like, you know, I'm really into something. For those of you that are listening, that won't make sense. But if you're watching, it just made sense. I think also that knowing the difference between giving up and managing your resources and your energy. Mm-hmm. Because to certain observers or people, and this is why you actually shouldn't give an F what other people think, is because some people could construe something as like, oh, they've given up. They've given up on it. No. I'm being really smart about my resource allocation and my energy and my creativity and my ability to, you know, to rebuild or restart or like, you know, whatever. And so I do think it's like really important that, you know, to actually kind of shut out some of the other noise. The better you know yourself. We keep talking about this. There's like the theme of life, the podcast, like everything. Right. Because you to have that understanding and like don't worry about anybody else or like what are they going to think? What are they going to say? No, like, you know, your energy, your finances, your, you know, creativity levels, like you know, the more you're in tune with that, you've got to make decisions that support those things. And if someone else is like, oh, it looks to me like they're just fucking giving up. No. And for the record, no one has said that to me, but just in case anybody was thinking it and didn't say it to me, I'm just going to shut you down right now.
I love it.
But yeah. We have.
But I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, it makes me think about the self-talk episode where it's like, even if there's not somebody else who's saying it out there, like the fact that it's a thought that comes through your head that you gain the reserve and the resource to shut down is just as important. Like, even if there's not like the external source that is actually there, the fact that it comes up and allows you to like find an answer for it that shuts it down, that's a specific kind of character trait too. And that kind of, I almost digressed completely on that because I just realized that is a character trait. Mm-hmm. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has the ability to talk theirself through their self-talk, talk theirself through the thing. Through that doubt. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think you actually bring up a really good point because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, nobody else said that to me, but that thought definitely occurred. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of that came from my own brain. You know, what are people going to say? Or what are people going to think? Like, should I do this? What if people think that? And when you can kind of tune that out, it's like, well, people are going to think or say whatever they're going to do. But I do have control over my own thoughts, or I can try to manage that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I love that.
Yeah. So where, you know, right now, do you feel like you're in a pattern of going with the flow, or like, how are you feeling right now? If I can,
I'm gonna add. I'll add a little bit of meat to that as far as like how I've been thinking about it, because I've asked myself that question since we started talking about this episode, and it's just like going with the flow is also utilizing all the resource necessary to stop from drowning. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, if I'm in a kayak, I still have to not hit rocks. I still have to move. I still have to use all my personal skill to reverse, to eddy up when I need to do the necessary things. Now, this is if I'm just talking about whitewater. If I'm just going down the Connecticut in Bradford, going down the Connecticut River, we're just floating. We're going with the flow and making sure that we don't hit the bank, that sort of idea. But if I'm going through like the whitewater, I'm going with the flow. I see I have to go through that pocket.
Yeah.
But in order to go through that pocket, I'm also going to do all that funky stuff that I taught myself how to do, and bump off these rocks and things like that. So when I say going with the flow, and if just to answer a simple yes or no to your question, I want to add that as my preface, is that like my idea of going with the flow is like it's a pontoon boat in a hurricane sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like, whereas like, yeah, these waves are gonna rock you and they're gonna fly all over the place and all these things are gonna happen, but you still have to like hold on and not get thrown off this boat and not, you know what I mean? So there's I am in a place where I'm going with the flow for sure, but only because I have a craft that I understand how to steer, you know what I mean? And I understand my own ability to navigate this treacherous ass flow that is life in this moment, you know, and not to make myself sound like I'm in the worst position of all of us, but you know, we're all in a position right now where the kind of spikes got thrown up in the river, and you know, it doesn't mean that everybody hit the spikes or everybody met the spikes. Like, some people are like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for the spikes the whole time, and like that's gonna be the thing that sends me to the next level. But for myself, there's, you know, definitely an element of navigating the flow that goes into going with it too, you know.
You know, listening to you talk about like the pontoon boat and the hurricane and just the way you described it, it's interesting because I think when people say, oh, you know, just go with the flow, there's this like association that going with the flow is just really easy. Like it's a lazy river kind of flow.
Right.
And sometimes it's a lazy river and like you got a beer in your hand and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go with the flow. But like, dude, rivers rage, man.
Sometimes it's a rip current, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a rip tide, you know what I mean? And you don't go with the flow. Like you figure out how to use the flow to get yourself to where you need to be. You know what I mean? And like that, I think is the that's not something that I think about often. That's something that just kind of really occurred to me. It's something, I think that's my inspiration for teaching myself how to swim, which can be an analogy for everything that I just said about learning how to drive the vessel, or how to steer the vessel. But when I look at the Pacific Ocean and I think about like, where's that water going to pull me if I jump into it? Like, if I jump into that water, I know that I don't understand enough about the dynamics of what's going on here at this break to know where I need to be so that I don't get sucked over into those rocks, because it looks pretty choppy in there today, you know, that sort of idea. So yeah, sometimes going with the flow is just like you said, you know, you're not in that lazy river.
But it's funny when you hear people use the terminology, I think for the most part, a lot of people are like, you know, man, come on, like, take it easy, just go with the flow, like, you know, let it ride, and as if that's like that it's always that just always means like it's easy, it's smooth sailing, when it's not. But it's funny how, like, I think that term used in sort of popular colloquialism, whatever, like, you know, English speak is sort of like, yeah, no, we're just kicking back, we're going with the flow, you know, and it's like, well, it can be more complicated than that, is all. Like, just calling attention to that.
Well, I think about the lazy river trip, you know what I mean? And if you've ever been in a donut or an inflatable just floating down the river, you know, there are always those times when we're just going to kick back. I'm going to kick back. I'm going to look at the sky. We're just going to laugh here for a second and just let ourselves drift. And, you know, you're going to bump into the shore eventually. And you're going to have to, like, push off the shore. And somebody's like, hey. And you're like, oh, shit, I'm over here? Oh, shit, okay, let me get myself back over there, you know? Or, like, so even in that, even if it is a lazy river, you know, just to go with the flow, it's going to take you all over the place. You still have to steer yourself around.
Exactly. It's
you know
exactly. I mean? It's not completely like relinquishing yourself to the elements, I guess. You know, it's really interesting, like, when we talk about the sort of it's elemental and our relationship to the elements, because, you know, as I'm sort of thinking about this, I'm thinking about the sort of big picture, like the grandiosity of when I think of Earth, and like Earth at its best, and then also Earth in its power, like when that Earth shakes, and like what that can do. And sort of we were talking in the pre-conversation sort of about fire, and how it, fire can cook our food and keep us warm, and it can also fucking explode. And fire kills, like fire destroys, but fire also sustains life. Like this sort of the duality that exists within the elements. Water is also like a life source. Like life begins in water. We are mostly water, but yet the power of water also can drown you. Like it can thrash you around. And then of course, same thing with the air, right? Like we need oxygen to breathe. That wind can pick you up and you rip the roof off your house. So it's really interesting for me to think about, our relationship to the elements, in terms of a relationship of respect, which is so important, which, unfortunately, Western colonizers have just, destroyed a lot of that relationship to the earth, and that respect of the elements, and how we manage our life within that, so I don't know, that's kind of, this conversation's kind of like pulling me in some of those directions, honoring this power, this elemental power, because it can keep us alive and it can kill us.
Well, yeah, totally.
Right?
Gosh, that's heavy. That made me think of earlier when I was thinking about this concept, this idea of talking about this podcast. I was thinking about how much of the idea of going with the flow in the situation of what we're talking about, which is like navigating the flow, or like, let's say the fire's happening, like, and now my fire's raging, right? I can't just throw my hands up and run away from it. Like I have to use my personal resource to be able to make so the fire doesn't burn everything up, or I have to have the faculty enough to understand when I need to get out of the fire and let it have its way, because it's going to do the thing that it's going to do now. Faith pours into it so hard, you know what I mean? Like, like I have the faith that I'm gonna throw this bucket of water on this fire and it's gonna put it out, or I have the faith that that water is not what I need to put this fire out, and my fire extinguisher is still gonna work when I grab it and I push it. And I have the faith that if that doesn't work, then we're going to be able to throw something on this thing to damp it out. If that doesn't work, then I have the faith that we're going to be able to get out of here. But I do have the faith in order to do all the different things. Like I did not pass out when the stove lit on fire. I didn't just like, fall over. This is the end of us,
Yeah.
And that's the same with it, whether it's the earthquake. Like you have the wherewithal to not just like throw your hands up and let the ceiling fall on you. You know what I mean? If the ceiling does fall on you, have you built the resource necessary to make the move under the table, or to do something necessary to make the thing that hits you not crush you? You know what I mean? So on and so forth. So again, it's the faith in this situation that if the ceiling does fall through right now, that I'm going to be able to I have built the personal resource and faculty to be able to deal with that, however close it gets to like actually making an impact on me or whatever. So I think about that in those situations too, how much faith plays into it, and then how much that is because that deeper power, that life sustaining power can also be the take the life right out of you power too.
Well, and I think we both touched on this in a previous episode, or this or that episode, when we were talking about, we did that. Definitely listen to this one because it's amazing. We had that like list of 20 items, and you got to know our favorite things. I think was our
that's what it was
the podcast, and
but the game was called This or That.
Yeah. And what was really interesting, and I just think of again this sort of theme of maybe like fire and ice or fire and water, when we both really like islands. But my island is Iceland. Right. And you're a big Dominica fan, and I think this came up for us in that conversation too, like when you talk about people who exist on an island and their relationship to the earth and the elements. I again think of this level of respect and understanding of that relationship, like knowing like how volatile that relationship is, or like folks that like literally live on volcanoes in a lot of these islands, and just sort of navigating that this understanding that like we've got to really take care of this place, because our relationship to all of these elements, it's like, well, you know, we're so small. Right. But I think about that, and I think a recent headline was like a lot of things are erupting in Iceland right now, like or there's a lot of earthquakes in Iceland right now, which potentially signals like that volcanic activity is near.
Right.
And I just saw that in the New York Times, but this is, you know, this is not a new thing. And folks that live in these kinds of environments, like, it's not a new thing for them. But yeah, I just kind of keep thinking about not only that too, and also how, like, what's your you're Capricorn?
Aquarius.
Oh, you're Aquarius. Yeah. Is that an air? What's are you
I
air or
so.
water? Air.
Air is Aquarius.
I think so. So I often kind of think about like our elemental signs, like as people. I'm a Sagittarius, like I am a fire sign. Okay. But I love being around air signs, because like air signs like get me fucking going, right? Like
right, exactly.
You're doing this, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. You know. But my romantic partner, he's a water sign. He's a Pisces. And I absolutely need that, because like he tones me down and like cools me off, because I'm coming in hot like all the time. But I think about like in our, you know, we can examine relationships with other people, and if you dig a little deeper, you're able to kind of talk about like, well, what is your sign, or like what do you feel like drawn to, or what other elemental energies are you drawn to for certain things, like. And I've talked to you about my, some of my other friendships and stuff like that, where we are somewhat like opposite, but that duality like really works for us. Mm-hmm. So that too, like, so if you get too many Sagittarius people in the room, things get a little crazy.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
I've seen it happen. But yeah, so I think about it, but I don't know. I guess we should fact check that. Fact check your sign or your element.
Right.
You know,
I think mine is air.
Yeah.
Air.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. I mean, that makes sense to me. Or I don't know. This sort of, I don't know. I get hyped up. I get hyped up in kettlebell class.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Totally. But hey, I mean, that kind of segues into what I was saying earlier about using fire as an analogy for a lot of the principles that I approach in life. Like, I definitely use fire building as an analogy for kettlebell training, right. Very specifically. And here's like just like a insider thing, as somebody who trains with me all the time and gets the benefit of that. But you know, like, my job is to keep your fire hot as you want it to be. So like if you're trying to make a hearty fat coal bed, like, I know where the oak is. I know how to get that fire going so that when you're done, your coals are hot and smoldering, they're ready to burn for a week, and then you come back to me. Or I also know how to get you the thick maple logs that are just going to continuously burn hot fire, flame on the whole time, or light the whole room up. Like, I understand how to manipulate fire. It's just something that in a literal sense I've been able to learn how to do, and been blessed as being able to interact with that element. And on more of an analogous way, that energy and interacting with that energy it tends to be how I interact with relationships in that sort of setting. Not necessarily in all my relationships, but in that setting, where the energy is very explosive. I mean, we're dealing with explosiveness the whole time. We're dealing with force production the whole time. Yeah. A lot of heat, a lot of energy in that space. And what I need is that, you know, whatever we put on top of you, you're gonna flame right on. Yeah. So yeah, exactly, you get it.
I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
You can think about it like if you look at the way that the sessions are typically how they're put together. Like, you leave, you're on fire, like, you're flaming. Like, we don't douse you. It's not my job to cool you down. Like, we'll do a cool down, but that's more of like a steady it out steady out this fire and take it with you, because we got it raging in here, and you can't walk around with it just raging all day. Like, it's raging in here, and when you take it out with you, you got to figure out like how to bundle it back down and make it a nice easy fire to sit next to and keep us warm, but it's not like the fire to call our friends from across the field or something like that. But just to like tie that together a little bit more concisely, the first part of our session is really just like, here's what we're dealing with. This is the bundle.
Yep.
Like, this is the wood that we've gathered. Here are the pieces of the wood. Now we'll start building that fire. We build it on structural stability. Right. Arm bars look like little mouse tails coming together to me, you know what I mean? And then like on top of that, we just build some foundation on top of that. Where are you today? Here's some bigger logs. How are we going to get this hot log flaming up?
Yeah.
When I say, you're going to do these double clean and push press with the 25s for 6 reps, and you're going to do another round. And then after that, we're going to do some rows with the 35s, like... By the time we get to the rows with the 35s, your fire's got to be up.
I was gonna say, like, so speaking from the perspective of the client, like the one that is experiencing it, like I can totally speak to that, like very viscerally on the other side, right? Like, how we warm up, and literally I can always pinpoint the fact where it feels like the match has been lit, and it's like that, right? Like. And usually I'm a super audible person when I work out. Like, you'll always get very vocal. So you'll always get some whoops and woots and stuff like that out of me usually. And then like kind of going into that like steady state, like feeling, okay, I'm up, and now, we're going to maintain, maybe go up a little bit, maintain, right? And then, and usually, like, it is kind of like this nice kind of come down, like, after. I usually do my grocery shopping after.
Nice.
Which,
perfect.
Yeah, it is and it isn't.
Please elaborate.
Because, no, well, it's like usually, like, I'm, also my appetite I'm actually just somebody, for some people, like, a workout suppresses their appetite. I've never had that issue. I don't know what that's like. I don't know what appetite suppression in general feels like. I'm just hungry in a good way. Like, I fuel a lot. But usually when I go to the grocery store, I'm like, rah, yeah, let's go. Because, like, I'm up.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, it's amazing. I can totally speak to that structure, that sort of fire building structure. And it's awesome, man. It feels so good.
Oh, I love that. I love the feedback, and then I love also seeing just on your face and hearing that in your voice how you do get that takeaway from it,
Yeah, this is going to seem like a tangent. I'm just going to jump in here. This is going to seem like really like totally out of left field, probably for our podcast listeners. But one of the reasons why this conversation and just this exchange that just happened is cool is because people might not know, when Mujib and I trained together, we are wearing masks when we train together. And we've been training that way for like 6 months, like masked training. And to actually be able to see each other right now and kind of like talk about the experience, but like to see each other's full expression and like energy, it's different. It's like,
right.
Because a lot is lost.
Totally.
I mean, you can, right?
Like that.
In our facial expression,
Wow.
even in our vocal projection, there's a lot lost behind those masks. So like one of the reasons I think we're getting like a little bit lit, like, right? Why do people say lit? Like so lit right now is because it's like, oh yeah, I'm excited. I can really like see that energy in your whole face.
Right.
I miss that. I miss that exchange with people, and I'm so stoked to be able to get that back at some point.
Right. Totally. Totally. Oh, I love it.
So it's a little like
tangent.
inside information for folks that are at least watching this broadcast. That if you're like, wait, why are they getting so excited? Because we actually we see each other, but we don't see each other in that weird mask interaction kind of way.
Right. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And how do you keep how do you keep it lit with the muffled mask on too?
Right.
And like that's something as well. I think that goes back into faith too. Like, I'm gonna have faith that this person's not just sticking their tongue out at me or something like that.
Right.
Hoping that they're smiling under there or something.
I'm making all kinds of contortions, like in that behind that mask when I'm lifting weights. I was like, it's actually better you can't see the face that I make.
Well, it was funny because we had the one satellite session,
right,
virtual session, and we realized that we were both just smiling the whole time.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, this is weird. I can see your face. Because I was like, oh, I never get to see your face when I'm doing something, and you're like, you're excited about it, and you never get to see me like, wincing.
Oh, goodness.
I wanted to touch on something because I'm a big fan of locating where we are on this planet and in this time in our lives. But today is Thursday, March 18th, and in 2 days it will be spring.
Right.
So I just want to mark that because it's a big deal, and it's definitely elemental when we think about the earth in particular. Spring, the spring equinox is a signifier of rebirth and renewal and regeneration and planting seeds and buds and flowers and all kinds of things. And so I think it is actually important to our topic today to bring that into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Spring.
Right. So I think about
and
that.
Are you feeling a different energy? Or, are you feeling it or not yet? Or
I think I would say if I had to pinpoint is the energy that I'm feeling related to that, I'd say yeah, for sure. I feel like because when I think about spring, I think about coming out of deep winter.
Yeah.
And when I think about deep winter, I think about it being very this lull time that starts to kind of phase back up, energetically. And so I can definitely feel that, coming out of that deepest, darkest part of the winter time and just getting to the other side of it and seeing the grass and be like, the grass. That's right. This is gonna be fun,
right?
And getting that glimpse of what the spring and the summer holds by coming out of the winter and seeing that this is where we are now.
And I think for those of us that I don't know where all of our podcast listeners hail from around the country or around the world, but in the Northeast in particular, we are coming out of a very dark, literal dark period because of a lack of sunlight, and which really has an effect on a lot of people. And so it is exciting to feel. Also, we just had in the Northeast daylight savings. Whether that's, we could probably devote some time as to whether or not that's a thing that we should be doing still, but it is definitely nice to see the days getting longer and to have an extended light. I don't know, I guess, for me, and also warmth, which is March is always an interesting month in Vermont, for sure, temperature wise and all kinds of, we could get a huge snowstorm in a week or two. We don't know. It's completely plausible. So we're definitely not, even in spring, that'll happen, or could happen. But even just what that extra light provides, I don't know, for me, energetically and, I do. It's feeling this just huge energy shift, either whether it's, and maybe also in conjunction with, vaccine rollouts and sort of this idea that, oh my God, maybe this summer will be different. Maybe I will be hanging out with friends and family that I haven't seen in a year or more. There's also, I feel that energy is among us.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think about it as an excitement. That's how I was considering it in thinking about the question as just excitement. Seeing everything start to melt and get warmer and thinking swimming. That's gonna be fun.
Right.
That's that sundress energy, that running around on the grass energy, it just starts amping me up. Like I really start getting excited about it, not just on a energetic level, but not, I guess the way I'll put it is like not just on like a esoteric level, but on a very like personal, like I'm thinking about the July. And July's gonna be a good time regardless of where we end up, like globally. Just because there's, it's different. It's warm. You can go right outside. We could be having this podcast sitting on the lawn.
Oh my God, yeah.
Things like that. You know what I mean?
With the mosquitoes.
Well,
there's always that give and take.
Then, I guess,
There's always that give and take. It's like, oh, it's warm out, but I don't know. Vermonters, we can complain about. It's too hot. It's too humid. I'm cold.
I don't have that element. Like I don't have that bone in me.
Yeah. I guess I do. It's like we can find something to complain about every season.
No.
Seriously, no, I know. No, I'm actually not. I don't think I'm really that bad. But
you're not wrong though. Like that's a theme here for sure. Like if it's dry, it's not raining enough. If it's raining too much. If it's hot, it's too hot.
Right.
Like it's 90 degrees, it's too hot. No, man. Like you gotta go swimming.
Right? Oh, yeah. Oh, it's just hot. Like, oh, it's just like humidity. Right? It's cold. Oh, it's freezing. I don't know. It's just... I don't. Mad respect to my fellow Vermonters. I mean, we're interesting folk. I'll leave it at that.
This makes me really think of like the elementals and thinking about those times of kind of butting up against the edges of them and having them interact with our personal well-being. Like, are there times that you can think of where something has cropped up, not just necessarily like to block your plans, but where the entirety of the elements that surround our existence has directed you or made you have to think a different way or made you have to make a different choice or do the hard thing?
Oh, well, what's interesting, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're getting at, but what you said has led me to this thought is, and I've actually talked to you about this a little bit when we train, that usually how my life has progressed in the last several years, like during a time of winter in the Northeast when we're kind of like in a lull or a hibernation or kind of stepping back, that's always historically been an energetic season for me, owning an indoor cycling studio. Like going from late November to right around now has historically been like the go, 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 go. And it's been interesting because this past year has completely offset that because of COVID. But it's interesting to that maybe I didn't realize how like going against the grain that cycle was. So, like, to have a business that's, like, go, go, go during a time where, like, actually my body is, like, oh, my God, dude. Like, and so this is, usually this podcast, like, makes me think of shit that I've buried deep, like, I haven't thought about. And it's so funny because the last several winters when Rev was doing its thing, like, as it always did, which is like, we're going gangbusters in the winter, I would be like flat out exhausted on the weekends. And then my friends would be like hitting up the mountain and skiing and like doing all kinds of stuff. And I was like content to be like, I was laid out on the couch. And I actually like, and again, this sort of like productivity anxiety or like whatever else was going on, I would in the self-talk, the negative self-talk, I was just like, oh man, like you're wasting your weekends. You should be hitting the mountain. You should be enjoying like all of the like what winter has to offer. And I'm like, but I am fucking tired. Why? Because the whole week I'm like running this indoor, like when we're busiest, I do not have I was not taking opportunities for self-care. Listen to that podcast. Right? Like, so what my pattern was, like go, 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 go until everything forces you down, not kind of figuring out like a schedule that was more conducive to like needing some deep rest, needing some rejuvenation. And instead I was just in this like messed up cycle of like going hard, basically passing out from like working too much, and then making myself feel bad about being laid out on the weekend and like missing out on, you know, whatever. And it was, what a yucky cycle. And I'm not saying that like winters were super fun at work, because we were busy and I love people, and so that was all good. But there's a better way. You know, I'm just kind of literally thinking in real time about what the last year has taught me. Like, there's a better way you know. So I know it's not exactly what you asked, but feeling like, you know, just like ignoring all of like the intuitive signs, like ignoring like the time and the time when it's just like, okay, either not that you need to just take the winter off and like sleep the whole time, but like I've learned a lot about managing my own personal energy during that time, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I haven't really fully thought about it. And then usually like summer is, you know, things like calm down work-wise and like, but yeah, it's really, really interesting. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's actually that's a very clear answer to the question that I was asking.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Because it's the thing about the elements is that they are ever present from every direction. And so, you know, like you just basically described something that came and changed your whole path, but then also the fact that it changed the whole path opened up a whole different line of thinking and realizations and personal noticings and things like that. So and then now you're making your decisions based off of what you know, which you wouldn't necessarily know if you were still in the same loop that didn't allow you to take the time to stop and think about it, you know, and ask yourself like, what is the best way to do it? And then, yeah, and then it offers you some insight for going forward.
It does, yeah, and that's the most important thing. And I think, you know, even if someone else doesn't have the exact same experience, I think, you know, some of what the pandemic year has sort of offered us is this potential insight, this potential like, you know, glimmer of, all right, how was what you were doing working for you? Right. Because again, you could certainly make the argument that nature, right, like a virus, has, you know, has made us need to reconcile and reckon with how we're living our lives.
Yes.
And again, like I said, like what's working, what's not working. And it's not like everything wasn't working, but a lot wasn't working.
Right.
And on an individual level, certainly on a societal level, you know, that we're still wrestling with and should be. You know? What about you?
Yeah, I can tell some stories to that.
Yeah.
I want to speak to one point that you just made, that it because you said something earlier about like, you know, with age we get it a little bit more and we can be better at it or whatever, but not always. Like not sometimes the loop keeps coming around and we just keep missing the point, and we still get older and like the same issues crop themselves back up, you know. Oh shit, I didn't deal with this the last time it came around, and when it came around again, like I'm not any more equipped to deal with it, but I have this much more baggage that I'm carrying with me, so maybe it's gonna hit me even that much harder, you know what I mean? And so there's this like ever-present kind of like becoming better at dealing with these things when they crop themselves up, and it's again it's not like a survival of the fittest thing. It's not that crazy or that deep. It might be, but I'm not going to take it there in my point. But it is like an opportunity to pick up a little bit along the way for the next time that this thing comes around. I'm be better equipped to deal with it, and then the next time comes around, I might be better equipped to deal with it because I'm now learning how to deal with the element. I'm engaged with the fact that like this is nature acting on my situation, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to put that in my toolkit that says like when nature acts like this, I've got this list of responses that I can use to deal with it. But then also like to continuously be introspective and to use hindsight to look back and to constantly be looking at those situations and say like, okay, this tool, how do I understand it a little bit more before I need to actually use it the next time? Like, can I think about how it came in handy the last time, and X, Y, and Z about like how to become a more fortified version of myself as I go through the world in that way.
What you just made me think of something too. Like, I really think you've got to be a curious person. Like curious about learning more about yourself, like, and having that not just curiosity but like willingness. When I think about, again, kind of almost bringing back the go with the flow, but a willingness to adapt and change, learn, adapt, and change. And not everybody is, and we can see evidence of that. We can certainly see evidence of that generationally speaking, you know, or when we say like, you know, so-and-so who's 80 and thinks this way, like they're probably going to take that to the grave at this point. Right. But not all is lost, because there are those that are curious and have an open mind and are willing to learn, unlearn, adapt, and change. And that can give us some hope.
Yeah, totally.
And I think too about our last conversation, we were talking about our generation, and I when we have these podcasts, like I think I percolate a lot on the things that we like afterwards, like a lot of the things that come up. I take this however y'all want to, but I go back and listen to our podcasts. I listen to our past episodes, or I re-listen to something we recorded, and just kind of think on some things. And I remember something you said about how you do spend a lot of time with people younger than you. That like really stuck with me, because I was just kind of like, am I hanging out with young people enough? And I think that is so important. Again, as you know, because I don't want to be stuck in anything. Like, I don't want to be stuck in my ways or like use that as an excuse, you know. And I already don't think that I have the constitution for that necessarily. But yeah, like I was thinking a lot about that, and sort of constantly like, you know, surrounding yourself with people that are going to challenge you and or bring you a different perspective based on where they're coming up and how, you know, their life experience or what, you know, whatever it is. But again, so like that curiosity, that open-mindedness, that, you know, also, you know, surrounding yourself with younger generations, you know, is really, that's just something that like stuck out for me from our last talk.
Right. No, I love it. And I that's something that I really look forward to, even going forward and getting older, is continuing to, and you know, it's interesting. Oh, wow. I love this. Again, I can't get enough of it. Because there's such a spectrum too, because I get the same benefit from, not the same benefit, but I get the similar flavor of benefit from hanging out with people that are older than me. And when I was younger, I gained so much from hanging out. Like when I was 18, the people that were 30 years old that were around me were dropping so much on me all the time. In the same way that when I was 30, I was constantly dropping stuff on 18-year-olds that I was around all the time. You know, like there was just a number of kids that I worked with from when they were like young teens to when they graduated high school, and like influencing them when they started going into high school, like when they're 8th grade going into 9th grade sort of thing. Maybe I was like 30 at the time, and or maybe a little younger, like a little more brazen, 27 or 28, and just enough of a lack of a filter to be able to say like, you know, you can control this whole thing however you all want to control it. And these kids would be like, what do you mean? And be like, yeah, you're within a school system where you can make up your schedule. Like you can decide, you can get your parents to sign off on it, and you can have this dude who you admire that knows everything about the wilderness teach you your science. And like you can write it so that your biology credit is covered by going for walks with this naturalist, and he's just going to introduce you to the swamps and the forests. You're going to meet him all over Vermont. He's going to take you around and show you stuff. That's your credit. I had kids that trained with me for their PE credit and
That's awesome.
got credit for all of high school. Freshman to senior got their credits from training with me.
That's
You know
awesome.
what I mean? And like that, and to open that up to people and to be like, this is, you can really write this how you want to. So that's the knowledge I was kicking at the younger folks. And then I think about the older folks than me. I don't have a lot of people right now in my circle, just because the circles are all so small, that I would say are my peers of the next generation. Like, obviously they're parents and family members and older people in the life. But when I say peers, I mean like the same people that are going to be with me at 2:00 in the morning doing the same thing that I would be doing at 2:00 in the morning, but they just happen to already be 50 years old or something like that. And so I see the value in that, because it makes me take it back to the elements and bring it back to the fire analogies. Like, we need that burning flame. We need that hot fire. Like, I need that 20-year-old hot fire that's going to really like throw some stuff in the mix that I wouldn't think of just yet. And I also need that sturdy formed coal bed, you know what I mean, of that older generation and that older wisdom that's going to show me what I can actually work with. And then I need my own self right now, that informed like hot fire burning, that's cooking the food, that's lighting the way, that's also getting ready for the coal bed, that's also utilizing the hot fire that's burning, you know what I mean, so on and so forth. And then likewise, we still need the kindling, and we still need the inspiration to go make fire. So, you know, we kind of need all of it in that way. And then I also need to put it out in the right way and bury it right. So, like, it's just, again, the analogy of and really to be a part of the entire spectrum is the only truest human experience that I've been able to interact with. Like, being around death and birth in the same year is, it's big, you know what I mean? And like, and to be here in that part of the spectrum, like to be present and watching people when they've been born, and then to be present and preparing people when they've died, you know what I mean? And like, that is a human birthright. Yeah. You know, we're actually, you know, for countless millennia is how we've interacted as humans. Like, it's a side of our own nature, or elemental nature, is to interact with the full end of the spectrum, you know? Like, we didn't I don't know. It's just, and it's easy to say, like, we didn't used to do this, blah, blah, blah. But that's not taking into account that, like, we just live in America. Like, the whole world is big, and people do this every day. Right. Exactly what I just described, you know, are there with their great-grandfather dying, with their great-grandmother, or their grandmother helping the great-grandfather on his way, with the mother helping them on the way, with the little baby crawling on the floor. Like, and they're sitting there looking at life being like, this is the circle of life. Like, you have your baby crawling on the floor, and my great grandfather who we're about to put in the ground, and I'm gonna learn how to dig a hole, or I'm gonna learn how to bless a body, or whatever it is that we do, and that's gonna make me a fuller human being, because it's gonna give me more of the picture of what life actually exists as, you know. And again, that's leaning into the elements. That's being willing to deal with the elements, and making ourselves able to accept and experience and interact with that energy when it comes forward, you know, versus a lot of different things that we might do otherwise, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. This it has me longing for this intergenerational connection that I feel like I don't have right now. I'm like weeping. Right, really, right. Like listening to you like talk about it, and thinking about that sort of cycle of life and cycle of family, and feeling the absence of it is like very visceral. Like, oh man, you know, or to be able to sit outside by a fire and like listen to a grandparent tell stories, or relate back, or whatever, have someone talk about like recipes, or I don't know, because there's that institutional knowledge within the family tree, like to get that passed down, and this idea that the young, you know, the youth of the family are helping to keep the elders going And the elders are there to also like teach and bestow this knowledge or this, either of the family or just of life in general, and how vital both of those pieces are, right? Like they're both really interconnected and really important to keep that cycle. And oh, my heart's a little yearning for this, right. For this, especially for those of us where that might be missing, and how really important that is, or how, it's, it's so important. Right. Like it's so elemental to our being, to our species. It's just, wow. Oh man.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm like, I need to call a family reunion together or something.
Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah. Wow. That was major, dude.
Right. I'm kind of speechless myself. It kind of blew the springs out of my own brain at that point.
There's going to be some people crying that are listening to this right now. Let it flow. Let it flow. Let the tears flow. It's totally fine. Like, seriously. Well, again, like this idea of elements. I'm like, my eyes are tearing up. My like chest is burning. I'm actually like feeling these very, real reactions to that. I'm like, oh my God, like I keep saying this, Mujib, like I don't have a child yet, and you're the first person that like even gets me thinking, not with you. I have a wonderful man that would be an amazing father. But it's like every time I talk to Mujib, you like make me want to be a mom, and I'm like, what are you doing? Stop it.
I'm all about vitality, That's
I know. I'm
like
what is this? I would always say like I am. There's nothing maternal about me, as if that's bad. No, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I don't know why I've been fighting it for so long. Right. I'm literally sitting here being like, oh, with the baby and like the grandparent and like we're talking and
telling you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What are you doing to me? I think we're almost done. Okay, I'm like like the mic has dropped. I don't think we can go any longer. I can't.
Oh, this is a great episode.
No, it's a fantastic episode, and I think again, what's unearthed or uncovered. It's always really interesting to me how we figure out what we want to talk about, and then where it goes. And I love that. I just love the different avenues that it travels, but it all makes sense. So it's just I learned something about you. I learned something about myself. I feel like I learned something about our collective experience and humanity in general. So so thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, well, y'all, thank you guys for listening. Episode 27. It's elemental. It's go have some kids, y'all. Call your grandparents. I don't know. Get the fam together in what way? And if not family by blood, family by choice. Like, I think also just to speak to it, like, we are longing for this. Those of us that have been separated in the last year due to obviously the pandemic circumstances, I think there is this, it casts this light on what's important. And I just think you hit the nail on the head completely. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah. Whew. Okay. All right. Well, in closing, my name is Sarah.
My name is Mujib.
And thank you all so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day.